All right, so
Yes, sir.
creating an
Ready when you
impactful
are.
data platform from zero. And okay, so not technical slides. So tech is actually the easy part. So some of you might not be happy about it, but really it's for people who are struggling to get buy-in on the data platform. So you probably already have somewhat of the technical. You're trying to get the org to realize the value. You're trying to sell other architects or senior people in the org. You don't have to be a senior, but typically the people this slides are good for are people who know the tech side of what they want to build. They're just struggling to get it built at the company they're at. So you're a dev, you're like, I want technical slides. I didn't sign up for this. No problem. I have 4 hours of content on YouTube that covers everything technical about how to build it, like from Flink to Pulsar, from Kafka, from considerations of on-prem and cloud. There's the link. I won't be offended if you watch it instead of me talking about the selling part of it. But anyways, there you go. So everything starts from something small. And I could ask you, what do you think these numbers represent? They could have no value. They might have some value. You might actually say exactly what these are. If we kind of change how they look a bit, does that change how they represent it to you? How about now? So now, typically, when I show people these numbers, you click credit card statement, banking statement. I've seen it online. Exactly. So these are examples of first 6 digits on your credit card. Now, everything starts from something small, 6 digits. So analyzing 6 digits at the one company I was at is 15% growth of the department and over 10 million a year. This is why we care about data. This is why we want to have an impactful data platform. So how does this do it? Data. So let's talk a little bit about how we kind of can get around to building out this kind of platform, selling people, getting stakeholders to come in. My rinse and repeat process basically looks like this. So we are going to identify some sort of problem. We're going to get buy-in. This is basically an infinite loop until you get enough to move out to the next stage. Implementation and measure. Those who are development might be really not happy with me because implementation is not at the start of this. It's actually the least of your worries. It is identifying something of high value, of high ROI in a short period of time, and then convincing the org and other stakeholders about how to move forward with it. So on the identify thing, the easiest way I could say for you today, you're like, this sounds great. I wish I had these 6 digits in my company. I wish I was in payment processing and could just do exactly what you did. What I would say is ask other departments, typically those customer facing, or even internally on your PM, and sit there and ask them, what would compromise the business you work at today? Is it the fact that a competitor could take your users from you? Is it the fact that you could have transactions blocked? Is it getting conversion? Everything I just mentioned, there's data. You might not be collecting that data today, but that's where you want to start. Start asking, do we collect this data? If not, how hard would it be? How quick could we get it? And if you're already collecting it, how do we actually analyze and go through it? The easy example I can give is you also have to be cautious in this because you're looking for problems that sometimes might come up against opposing views in the company. The easy thing I could think of is Blockbuster and Netflix. Hey, we all like to go to the store to rent our movies. Was Blockbuster stance, and we all know Blockbuster's not here anymore. Who won Netflix? And that's the hard challenge in these problems is some of the stuff that you're going to be doing on trying to pitch a data platform and the value might cannibalize your existing business. You might, when you start asking people what would compromise the business today, it's going to be, a product that does kind of a different market as us. We're on-prem based software and the cloud products might come in and kill us. Well, how do you get the data to then go on the cloud market? I would rather control the cannibalizing than have someone else come in and just, take the whole pie eventually from us. Like Kodak and Canon is the exact same thing. Kodak, for those who don't know, had digital cameras long before Canon and all the others. And they said, how will we make money selling our film? That's a dumb business. And where's Kodak today? So, these are the problems I look for. Things that would put your company out of business or basically shut down your business or bankrupt the business today. And those are kind of fun. Like finding them as a dev is really kind of a different hat. But, think of it as almost looking for like bugs in code as a developer. They're fun and interesting when you're like, how would this work? What would cause this? Kind of same process. So you identify something. Now, the honestly hardest part usually is the buy-in. Essentially, it's like getting everyone aligned on the problem that you want to tackle. So it's going to be convincing people that there is value in what you're doing. It is going to be getting internal stakeholders aligned with it. It is going to be culture shift because people are going to say, why are we going to spend all this time doing this thing that we think might or might not pay off? I don't have a crazy answer to this aside from try and go back to the identify and get something that's so straightforward and simple on the data that you're like, all I'm asking for is like 2-3 weeks, and I think we can prove something here. And that's typically enough interest for someone to give you the leash of starting. You won't have a full-blown data platform that centralizes all your data in the org and anyone can use it as a self-service platform. Like the start of the data platform for all my examples, like it's called bin routing for the credit card stuff. The first 6 digits is known as the bin, was Excel sheets from one team that used to upload this and it would import in our database and that would determine how we would do things with these. As simple as you can, just to prove your point. That's where the data platform starts. Then you can go on to build like the larger ones that I do today, which is like central access and multi-PBs and everything's real time and all this, the stuff that us as engineers get super excited about building. But it's never going to see the light of day if you can't start somewhere and show the ROI. Even though it might be simple in your head and you're like, why don't they see it? You have to show it. So implementation, like I said, is kind of the easy part. I have the slides, it walks you through all the stuff, but it's like taking out the dev hat temporarily and putting on the biz hat to just say, how can I build this in the least amount of time to prove my point? If you're sitting there and it's like, well, if we spend 6 months built, that's probably going to be too long. It's 2 quarters for the business. It's not going to survive like a shift of waiting for that long to show that like you may or may not have value. It's also going to eat up resources for 6 months, the opportunity cost. Those devs could be working on something else for 6 months. It's something I think a lot of devs struggle on when they say that they're not having impact in the business. It's just switching the lens at how we look at problems. If you want to have impact, or why don't they just let me build X? You have to look at it from the business side. And the way that we do this is small amount of implementation for quick ROI to just prove that there's validation here. Kind of similar is like, think of it back on the bug thing, is you're not going to spend weeks and weeks trying to debug this one problem. You're going to eliminate the low-hanging fruit to make sure like, oh, it's not just this thing. It's not just a small thing. It's not because we have a firewall that blocks the network or something. You're going to eliminate a bunch of these small, quick things to make sure that you're not going down a rabbit hole. Business thinks kind of the same way, just not on technical terms, right? So once we have that, the easy part, honestly, is just the measure. You prove your case, you make it. For us on the routing stuff, it was kind of easy. It was like, does the transaction go through? Does the transaction not go through? Yes, it does. Great, we're making more money. So anyways, what I wanted to say was like hardest to easiest. The hardest thing is identifying and getting buy-in, then it's implementation. It is not the technical. The technical might seem like the hardest from your aspect as a developer, but to try and get your idea to actually see the light of day is by far not even close. Like the business side is going to be your biggest struggle. And I know devs hate this. I know I hate saying this, and I know I hate hearing it, but it is not going to be the technical problem. It's been solved. Someone else has solved it. You're not the first, probably, unless we have someone from Fang. You're not the first. It's already been solved. It's going to be convincing everyone else. So with that said, I did want to give some real life examples because I did put out those flashy numbers of like money. So the first story was, as I kind of alluded to, something called bin routing. On the image, you'll see the first 6 digits, and now it's technically the first 8, determines who issued the card. Is it Visa, MasterCard, American Express? What was the bank that issued it? And sometimes the account type behind that. And you might sit there and be thinking, well, how does that actually create money, right? So I'm going to just let you ponder that while I just drink some tea. Okay, so the secret sauce, the thing that makes this company so much money is, okay, we can go from bank-to-bank communication. Which bank has higher approvals through other banks? Which banks are in what country? Because if I know what country you're from, I know whether I should change the currency conversion on the transaction page automatically. Do I want to settle in USD or CAD? Do I want the foreign exchange fees to go from CAD to USD, or do I know you have a Canadian bank, so I'll just accept Canadian dollars? Do I want to change the dynamic pricing? You're like, if I know the bank is in Montreal, I know that your locale in currency is probably, well, I know your locale is probably going to be English or French, if you're in Quebec. But you're going to use Canadian dollars. So maybe I dynamically change the price from $20 normally USD to 15 CAD or vice versa. And this is more impactful if we have someone from, like, say, Brazil, where having a subscription for $99 US is not going to fly there. It's just too much money, So I would rather change that to Brazilian Rios of like 10 Brazilian Rios a month, because the conversion will be high there. Those are users that we normally just lose because it would be too expensive. And if it's a software as a service business, there's not a huge cost to us typically. So I just want the highest conversion at the highest amount of money possible. So 6 digits, huge impact. Now, as I said, so how we did in the business was we identified some cards that were always declining certain banks. And the buy-in from the business was essentially like, hey, we pay every time we try these cards. If we don't do that, we'll just pay less, and maybe we can find a way to increase them to go to other banks. Implementation was, I kid you not, initially, it was as simple as, if these first 6 digits are this, just don't call this other bank that we normally deal with. Like, that was it. That's where it started. And then measure was, we saw a decline in fees because we weren't calling this bank anymore, and then you optimize. Longer term was, okay, can we have an Excel sheet? Can we work with the data analyst to know which banks for what? It then was build a platform of different weights. Should we try this bank all the time? None of the time? How do we know that it didn't change over time? Like, a bank that used to decline this all the time might not be declining it 3 months down the road. So you start building out the platform that allows everyone to have the tooling to do this and to stream it. Because ideally, you would like this to happen real time, or some sort of model to actually be trained to go, yeah, this bank doesn't like that bank. That bank has terrible conversions off of this card. So that was the story of number 1. Number 2 is where I am today, which is BlueCat. BlueCat deals in the networking space. We get significant network data, and essentially we want to use it in other ways. So I'll just jump into this. It's like, when I joined, it was, okay, it's too expensive what we're doing. So the buy-in was initially COGS, and convince the business they need to save money. This was just a way of getting what I wanted so we could start the data platform. But then we switched it, which is the value of the data is not actually reducing our COGS by implementing better tech. It was, we have new features and customers want to pay us for these features. So we actually built the whole data platform to be able to do it from the security aspect of the network data that we get and the visibility that we get from the DNS activity. So then it was, hey, the buy-in is actually customer features. We can actually provide ways of detecting like malware on their network. So we wrote a passive model. We didn't actually actively do this. We did it after the fact. We proved the model worked. We found a customer that had malware. We actually identified it. And then we compared it against a threat security feed that we could actually confirm we didn't have a false positive. And that was enough that the business is like, this is a big thing. So anyways, the too long didn't read tips. You need a timeline, 1 to 6 months. And you either have to go really big or really small. And what I mean by that is you're either going to pick a project that's going to have huge impact, like $10 million a year more, or it's going to be really small where you're like, hey, it's only going to take 2 weeks, but we could maybe bump revenue by 1%. Measurable ROI ASAP. The project won't continue. The team won't have any resources if you can't prove the value. Product teams don't have this issue because they ship features and customers use it or customers buy it. The data platform has to show its value, just like every other team. And for those who are curious, 90% of you should probably buy it and not build it. So go buy Databricks or Snowflake or Palantir or whatever the flavor is. And with that said, I'll plug the technical stuff slides for 4 hours. There's your 4 hours of technical content. And I am writing a book that is covering all this. If you would like to be an alpha reader, there's my email. And also I'm hiring at Blue Cat. And that is my slides, and we can take questions.